I'm Terry Bell, and this is my story. It's funny how quickly life can change. It all started the day I went fishing with two of my friends. My wife, Abby, had already been sitting in her office for about an hour when she got a phone call. "Is this Abigail Bell?" the caller asked. "Yes, it is. How can I help you?" "We have kidnapped your husband and are holding him for a ransom of $250,000. You have 24 hours to collect the money or your husband will die. If you call the police, he will die. I will call you again at 3 o'clock this afternoon and give you instructions on how to get the money." "Is this a joke?" "Who are you?" Abby was scared and stunned. She didn't know what to do. "I went on a fishing trip with friends to Lake Erie for 3 days. I didn't even bring my cell phone with me because we didn't want anything to interfere with our fishing trip with my two friends. Me and my friends were on my boat on Lake Erie, drinking beer and fishing, having a good time. We had never gotten out that often, and we all really enjoyed the fishing. My boat was quite large, a 35-footer that could even accommodate 6 people if they were friendly, although we rented a cabin to stay in overnight. For the last 6 years, we've done this kind of camping and fishing trip once a year. While I was chugging another beer, the Coast Guard came speeding up to us and stopped next to the boat. With guns at the ready, they asked, 'Is one of you Terry Bell?' 'That's me,' I replied. 'What the hell happened that you pulled a gun on us?' 'I'm sorry, sir, but we were asked to find you. We've been told you've been kidnapped and are being held for ransom. I can assure you that I'm fine. These are 2 friends of mine, Joe and Al. They are also 2 of my employees. We came here to fish for a few days. We decided to do without cell phones. We didn't want to be disturbed, we just wanted to fish. Could you please point your weapon in the other direction?' 'Excuse me, Mr. Bell. We'd like to board your boat and take a look around. Do you have any weapons on board?' 'Just the standard flare guns and other emergency items you would expect to see on a yacht.' 'Welcome aboard.' They quickly searched the yacht and checked the IDs of the 3 of us. After that, they apologized but asked if I would go with them. The police needed to talk to me at my house. 'Joe, Al, go ahead and enjoy your fishing. I'll see if I can get back to the cabin tonight or tomorrow. There's no sense in spoiling your vacation. If for some reason I don't come back, see to it that the boat is docked and securely tied up. Clean and lock the cabin and drop the keys.' I walked out with the Coast Guard and headed for shore. I had met Al and Joe in prison 12 years earlier. I had been convicted of receiving stolen property, which I will talk about later. Joe and Al also met in prison. They were both serving time for assault and battery. It seems each of them had caught his wife cheating on him and had beaten up his wife's lover. They could have been locked up for attempted murder, but they took the deal, reducing the case to assault and battery. Needless to say, they both divorced. During our time in prison, the 3 of us became good friends and had each other's backs. When I was released shortly afterward, I told them that I would do my best to help them when it came time for their parole. Before parole, I served 3 years. My father owned an auto parts warehouse. I had worked for my father since high school and eventually took over the business when my father became ill and passed away. A year after my release from prison, Al and Joe were released on parole. At the hearing, Dad and I told the parole board members that we had jobs for both men at a parts warehouse. They needed somewhere to live, and Dad mentioned that he had a house site near the parts warehouse and could rent Al and Joe a trailer each to live in. Since they had a job offer and a place to live, they both got out of prison. Parole happened 8 years ago, and both men thanked their father and me. They were great employees, and now they are also good friends of mine. They were each able to buy a used car for a good price at a junkyard. They became mechanics and tow truck drivers. They were jack of all trades, and there was nothing they couldn't do at a junkyard. All they needed was to start a new life. They even started dating, and in time they married and got their own homes, each with a family of their own. No doubt they were grateful to Dad and me for helping them. They continued to work for us and were paid well. The police drove me home as I didn't have a car. When I walked in the door, Abby ran up to me and hugged me. "Thank God you are safe. I was so worried about you. Where have you been?" "On the damn lake, fishing until the Coast Guard came up to the boat with guns." "What the hell is going on?" The man stepped forward. "I'm Detective Abel. I'm in charge of this case. We need to know your whereabouts for the last 24 hours. "Bullshit. You guys took me away from my fishing vacation, and I want to know why before I tell you anything." "Fair enough. Your wife called us this morning and said she got a call at work informing her that you had been kidnapped and were demanding a ransom of $250,000. The caller said he would call your house at 3 o'clock. We have everything set up and are waiting for the call. This must be some kind of sick joke. Who the hell would try to kidnap me? I own a goddamn warehouse and trailer park. You think they're after auto parts or a used one-horse? Abby, did they say anything else? They said, you have 24 hours to raise the money or your husband dies. If you report to the police, he will die. I will call you at 3 o'clock and give you instructions on how to get the money. I was so scared. They told you that if you called the police, they would kill me, and you called anyway. God, if this was real, I could be dead. Abby began to cry. Mr. Bell, your wife made the right decision. She didn't know what to do. There was no way she could have handled this on her own. That's easy for you to say, because it wasn't your goddamn life that was at stake. Damn it. What's going to happen now? I'm fine. Can't you all just get out of my house? You can see I'm fine. Mr. Bell, we have to take every threat like this seriously. We'll stay here and see if another call comes in. Now, would you mind telling us your whereabouts for the last 24 hours? Of course. Joe and Al picked me up early yesterday morning. We rented a cabin on the lake for 4 days. We drove there, took my boat, and went fishing. We arrived in the evening, cooked a meal, ate, and relaxed in the cabin. This morning we had breakfast and were on the road again before the Coast Guard caught up with us. You know the rest. It was almost 3, and the detective and his officers had set up a telephone beacon on the kitchen table. He was going to have Abby there to talk to possible suspects if a call came in. I was sitting in the living room with 2 other detectives drinking coffee. There was a speakerphone on the coffee table so we could all hear any conversation. Detective Abel asked Abby to tell me that she had contacted her attorney to help her raise money in case of a call. The detective was going to play the part of the lawyer. I just sat there shaking my head. I said to the other officers, "Damn it, I could be out fishing." The phone rang at exactly 3 o'clock and Abby answered the phone. "Mrs. Bell, it's nice to see you came home early to take my call." "Do you have the money ready?" the caller asked. The voice was disguised. "Not yet. I've contacted a lawyer to help me get the money," Abby replied. "What? I told you that if you contacted anyone, your husband would be dead. Did you contact the police too?" No, only with a lawyer." "I'm sorry, but I didn't know how to collect that money." "You just told me not to report to the police. Please don't hurt my husband." "Put that damn lawyer on." She did as she was told, and Detective Abel picked up the phone. "This is John Wells. I'm the Bell's attorney." "What exactly do you need?" We knew he was just wasting time and trying to trace the phone. "What the hell is this?" "We need the goddamn money or Bell dies." "Is that clear enough?" "If we find out you or Mrs. Bell called the authorities, he dies." "This isn't some goddamn game." "I'm not playing either." "Before we give you that kind of money, we need to know that you have Mr. Bell and that he's alive." A commotion was heard on the other end of the phone. Then we all heard a voice. "Abby, it's me, Larry. These masked men came and kidnapped me right after you left the hotel this morning. Please give them what they want. Please." Then we heard a bang. It sounded like someone had been punched in the stomach. "Damn it," I said. "That's my loser brother, Larry." "What the hell does he mean you were with him this morning?" "As you can see, sweet Abby. We know you lied to us. Was that your husband yelling in the background? Does he know you were having fun with his brother? Looks like we got the wrong Bella. You see, we went to the dump yesterday and were told that Mr. Bell had gone on vacation for a few days. We stopped by your house yesterday morning to see if he had left and saw you were on your way out. We followed you to your hotel. Your room was registered to Mr. and Mrs. Bell, so of course we assumed it was your husband. After you left the motel this morning, we kidnapped the wrong Mr. Bell. He told us over and over again that we had the wrong man. We didn't believe him until he told us he had a twin brother. What do you want now that you don't have Terry Bell?" the detective asked, posing as a lawyer. $300,000 by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, or Larry Bell dies. The extra money is for the lies and trouble we went through. Tomorrow morning we'll call you where to bring the money. No more games, no more money, he dies. The caller hung up and I stood up and started yelling at Abby. "You goddamn whore, now you're having fun with my brother. I won't give a dime to save his ass. The bastards who caught him will only save me from destroying anyone." 2 officers stood between me and Abby and asked me to sit down. I walked over to the refrigerator and got myself a beer and turned on the TV. I will have nothing to do with my gigolo brother or my whore wife. As soon as this farce is over, we'll get a divorce. The detective told Abby that he needed to know if what the kidnapper said was true. He needed to know her every move from the moment she left the house the previous morning. She was very upset and crying, but I acted like she wasn't even there. I didn't care anymore. Abby did explain to the detective, but she tried to talk so I couldn't hear, but I heard everything. She met Larry at the motel. His wife thought he was out of town. They had been lovers for months. I sat there getting more and more angry that I was being played. After dinner last night, we went to our room. "I'm not going to tell you about how we made love," Abby replied. I cringed. Lovemaking? My brother never loved anyone. He only wanted your slutty ass because you were married to me. He didn't care about you, and now I don't either. Abby kept talking, but now she was afraid of me. She was glad the police were around. We said goodbye in the morning and agreed that I would see him in the evening. I went to work to make it look normal. When I arrived and got settled, I got a call that my husband had been kidnapped. That's when I realized how worried I was about him. I didn't know what to do, so I called the police. I've already told you the rest of the story. Did you expect to return to the room tonight? The detective asked. Turning away from me, she replied, Yes, we got a room for 2 nights. Damn whore, shouted I. One of the cops jumped up to restrain me, but I didn't get up even though I really wanted to. Once in jail is enough. Larry and I really were twin brothers. We may have looked alike, but we were completely different. I liked mechanical things while Larry was more interested in girls. We usually got along as kids, but only because I was forgiving. We both dated, but Larry always got my girlfriends. He was the more suave conversationalist and usually ended up staying with the girl, dumping her after he got what he wanted. My philosophy was that there were plenty of fish in the sea, and if the girls wanted Larry so badly, so be it. I was never in love with any of them. Our mother died of cancer when we were 18, and we lived alone with my father until we graduated from high school. Larry wanted to go to college and become a salesman. He had the gift of gab, and he would be good at it. The only person Larry really cared about was himself. I, on the other hand, worried about my father. He had owned a scrap metal business for most of his life. To most people, it was just scrap metal and junk, but his fortune exceeded $1 million. Most of the money was tied up in what was called inventory. I didn't go to college. I stayed home and helped my father. We worked hard and helped build the business even more. Dad was very proud of me and the business. One night I went to a party and met a girl. We started dating, and within a year we were married. She moved into the house with me and Dad. Eventually, Dad told us we could live in the house, and he would live in one of his trailers in the trailer yard. It was all he needed and gave us more privacy. Over the next 3 years, my wife Beth and I had 2 children. Everything was going well until Larry came home from college. One day I saw Larry trying to hit on Beth and we hit it off. Being the stronger of the two, I slapped his ass and yelled, "If you come near her again, I'll destroy you." Beth didn't utter a word. She knew to be quiet when I was angry. I'd never accused her of anything, and she was fine with that. But I had my suspicions. Neither Beth nor Larry ever denied what I said. After that day, Larry and I rarely saw each other. We kept in touch, but Larry kept his distance from Beth. After graduating from college, he took a job as a sales representative for a window and siding company. He often spent several days a week traveling, but it gave him the opportunity to meet many women. He had the gift of gab and always found common ground with women who had money. He would live with them for a while, and after using them, he would find another. His job paid okay, but it didn't fit the lifestyle he wanted to lead. He was living large because of the women he dated. It's been 12 years since I married Beth. We had a good marriage, but now I always had suspicions about her. But our children were fine. Because of them, I never gave cheating a second thought. Just about that time, my father got sick. He'd had a stroke, but he seemed to be coping. I went out of my way to call Larry and ask him if he wanted to join a salvage firm, and he just laughed at me, saying, "He wants nothing to do with our junkyard." Of course, Lou, our father, was uncomfortable, but I told him I would always be there for him. One day, we had a man come in with several cars he wanted to get rid of. Dad made him an offer under the table, and he accepted. Unfortunately, my father had already done this several times to avoid paying extra taxes. Because of this, he never checked the cars against the VIN numbers. A few days later, law enforcement came to the house with a search warrant. Apparently, the man who sold the cars to my father had told the police that he disposed of them in our parking lot. They found the cars and were preparing to arrest my dad for receiving stolen property. There was no way I was going to let Dad go to jail. I stepped forward to speak to the agents. "Sir, I have accepted these cars." My father never knew about it. I was going to take care of the registration, but I didn't have time. All they needed to do was arrest someone. I was arrested and pleaded guilty. I was found guilty and sentenced to 5 years in prison. My father was distraught and said he would do anything for me. I hugged my father and he tearfully told me how sorry he was. The day I was sent away, I realized that my dad would not survive prison. He already had a bad heart, and I didn't want him to die alone in prison. Beth left me and filed for divorce 2 months after I was sent to prison. She said she didn't want to live alone. She took the children, of course, and soon began dating an insurance agent and married him a few months later. I was very upset about losing the kids, but said to hell with her. I corresponded regularly with my father. He came to visit me every month. Several of his cousins helped my father. Coming from prison, there wasn't much I could do in the salvage business. At least Dad trusted his cousins who were a little younger than he was. During my time in jail, I met Al and Joe. They seemed like pretty decent guys to me. Each of them told me a similar story about catching his wife with a lover. In each case, they had beaten them so badly that the lovers had to be hospitalized. I understood that this could happen. I almost did it to my own brother. I told them that when they got out on parole, I would do everything I could to help them. I even talked to my father about it, and he agreed to hire these people when the time came. After serving 3 years of my 5-year sentence, I was released. I was happy that I was free and could help my father again. My father made me part owner of the business. He told me that way when he died, it would be my business, and Larry could have no claim on it. His cousins were doing a pretty good job, so we kept them. Dad said they worked a little harder after I got back. That made us both smile. The next year, we hired Al and Joe. We kept the promise we made to those 2 men. They said they would be forever grateful to us. Several years passed, things were going well, and business was booming like never before. I made sure that every vehicle we received went through a complete inspection. I wasn't going to spend any more time in jail. One day, I had to rush my father to the hospital. He had a heart attack. I called Larry and he got a chance to see his father before he died shortly afterward. As promised, I inherited the rest of the business and the trailer yard. I also got the house I lived in with Beth and then Dad after he was released from prison. Larry got the money. Dad left him his savings account, stocks and bonds totaling almost $300,000. He left happy. He had recently married a wealthy woman. Her husband had died, and he was there to comfort her. Her name was Cora, and she was smart enough to have a pre-infarction fortune. She and her husband owned a real estate business and were quite successful. I met Cora and spoke with her a few times. She was a pretty woman and seemed intelligent. I think her loneliness drew her to Larry. She could have accomplished so much more, I thought. That's how we met my now wife, Abigail. We met at a party hosted by none other than Cora and Larry. Abigail was a beauty. Great body and nice legs. She would have been perfect for Larry. Too bad she was friends with Cora. She'd been married twice and divorced twice and never had children. She worked at an insurance office in downtown Cleveland. Abby and I started seeing each other regularly. Soon we decided to get married. I incorporated a salvage business so that no one could lay their hands on it. Abby brought about $400,000 into the marriage and hoped that I wouldn't mind having an advance on it as well. She told me she thought we would be together for life, but unfortunately she had already been married twice. Needless to say, I didn't mind. In fact, it protected my assets as well. I knew she had built up her savings from her ex's money. I cared for her a lot, but I'm not sure I would call it love. I was always left with too many questions for people for me to fully trust them. My first wife, Beth, agreed to let me see my children from my first marriage after I got out of prison. I was pleased that they still called me Dad and that I was present in their lives. I was now helping them both go to college. Life was going well for me. Business was going great. Al and Joe had become my best friends and I was able to see them quite often. I was married to a beautiful woman. Things were much better. A couple months before that, Abby started acting a little strange. I thought it might be some kind of female characteristic and left it at that. But I kept my guard up, even though I had no reason to believe she would cheat on me. I told her that my friends Joe and Al and I were going fishing for a few days. It would be impossible to reach us since neither of us had brought our cell phones with us. We had been going fishing for the last 6 years, so this was nothing new. Just some time with the guys. I told her that if she did have an emergency, she could always call the Coast Guard. So far, that hadn't happened. Chapter 2. The detective was talking to the operator of his equipment. They were hoping to trace the number they were calling from. They knew they had been in contact for more than long enough. Have we been able to establish a cell phone? Yes, sir, but not very well. The caller used a track phone, which you can buy almost anywhere. They're disposable. You can add minutes to them if you want. I traced the number, but that only tells me it was purchased at a Walmart store. It could have come from anywhere. The tower that received the call was in downtown Cleveland. Can we narrow it down? The detective asked. Not really, just within a 5-mile radius of downtown Cleveland. That's not much, sir. Send 2 men to the motel and see if we can find out anything. Mrs. Bell, we'll need the name of the motel and your room number. Maybe someone saw something, or even the monitor in the lobby might have picked up something. Check to see if Larry Bell's car is in the parking lot. Abby gave the officer the requested information, as well as the make of his car. She became concerned again and asked about the ransom. I stepped forward and said, I'm not giving him a dime. If you want him so badly, pay the ransom for him with your own money. By the way, I think we should let Cora know since her husband has been kidnapped. No, we can't call her, Abby said. On the contrary, Mrs. Bell. We need to talk to her and find out what she might know, Detective Abel said. Besides, it's her husband, and she deserves to know that he's been kidnapped. Detective, let me call her. I'll have her come to the house and you can interview her here, I asked. Okay, but get her here as soon as possible, Detective Abel said. Hi, Cora, it's Terry. Do you have a chance to come to our house? We have something important to discuss with you, I asked Cora. Does it have something to do with Larry? He's supposed to be in Pittsburgh and he's not there. Do you know where he is? Cora asked. No, I don't know where he is. The detective is at our house right now and he needs to talk to you, but not on the phone, so please hurry, I asked. Cora arrived 15 minutes later. I met her at the door and took her hand as she walked into the living room. What's going on? Where's Larry? Is he okay? Mrs. Bell, Detective Abel said. Just call me Cora, since there are 2 Mrs. Bells here. Where's Abby? Is she here? She went out to the bathroom. Cora, tell me, what did you mean when you said your husband wasn't in Pittsburgh? Detective Abel asked. Do you know where he is? Why won't anyone tell me anything? Cora trembled. I uttered. Cora, Larry has been kidnapped. Listen to me, please. The people who kidnapped him thought it was me, but they took Larry by mistake. He's alive, but they're demanding a ransom. Oh my God, I can't believe it. Why would anyone kidnap Larry or even you, Terry? It doesn't make sense. Cora, we need you to tell us everything that has happened in the last few days, the detective said. We've spoken to your husband for a few seconds, and we know he's alive. We're trying to find out where he's being held. Cora was a little nervous, but said she would tell them anything she remembered. I've been wondering more and more lately if Larry is cheating on me. He was supposed to go to Pittsburgh for 2 days for one of his shows. He often attends home remodeling shows. He gave me his motel and room number and told me he would share a room with another vendor to cut costs. He has done this many times. This time he looked a little different or nervous. What makes you think he might have been cheating? The detective asked. He's been more aloof lately. You know, too tired to make love. He's also been missing more often than usual, usually for a day at a time. I needed to know for sure, so I was going to follow him to Pittsburgh. He left yesterday morning and said he'd be gone for 2 nights. He even called me when he announced his arrival. But he didn't know that I had given his motel and room number to a private investigator. I know it's wrong, but I needed to know if he was cheating on me. It cost me $1,000, but it would be worth it to find out that my husband had been faithful to me. The private investigator called me this morning and told me Larry Bell wasn't there. He was checked into a motel, and the private investigator even talked to another man in the room who told my private investigator that Larry had paid for half the room, but said he had another engagement, but didn't know where. He came into my office this morning and gave me back $500. He said he didn't feel he had earned it, as he had never seen Larry. Abby walked into the room. Her eyes were red as if she had been crying. Cora went over to hug her, but Abby held up her hands. What's going on? What's the matter, Abby? First you say my husband is being held for ransom, and now my best friend is crying and doesn't want me anywhere near her. What aren't you telling me? Terry, you never lie to me. What's going on? I handed Cora a beer and told her to sit down. I told her the whole story and about the kidnapping when they took Larry from the motel room thinking it was me. The reason they thought it was me is because my damn wife was doing it with your husband. What, Larry and Abby are having an affair? Looking at Abby, Cora said, "You two-faced bitch. When I told you I thought Larry might be having an affair, you comforted me and told me he wouldn't do that to me. And now I find out you're the one having an affair with him." Cora started to cry. I put my arms around her and pulled her to me. When she came to her senses, the detective asked if she had anything to add. Add? Thought I. Is he kidding me or something? He gambled a lot and lost a lot of money. I don't know if it had anything to do with the fact that they wanted Terry, Cora replied. The detective asked me if there was anyone I thought might try to kidnap me. Any enemies or someone who would know I had money ready. That's the thing, I replied. I'm worth a lot of money, or at least my business is worth that kind of money, but I don't have anywhere near the amount of money I could get quickly. It takes me a while to sell mutual funds and stocks. There's no way I can get, say, 100,000 quickly. As for someone trying to get the money, my asshole brother probably set it up himself. Since he's sleeping with Abby, he probably knows that she has a few 100,000 that she could get quickly. Abby shrieked. He didn't do any of that. He loves me and we were going away together. He never asked me for anything. You're just jealous of him. You always have been. You goddamn whore! Cora screamed. You can have that asshole. I've spent enough on him already. He even took money out of my account. I had to press charges. After he comes back, I don't want anything more to do with him. Detective Abel could see that the situation was getting out of hand. He asked everyone to calm down for now. We have yet to find the kidnappers and Larry Bell. Mrs. Bell, he looked at Abby. We need to find a way to get the $300,000. Your husband has made it clear he's not going to help. Are you in a position to raise that amount of money? Cora, it's your husband. Do you have that kind of spare cash? Cora looked at me. What am I going to do, Terry? I have a couple 100,000, but that's all I have left. He's my husband until I file for divorce. Don't spend a dime on him. He doesn't deserve it. He's been using you and spending your money for years. He wants Abby. Let him use your finances to bail his ass out. That would take almost everything I have, Abby replied. You're both horrible. He's your brother and your husband, Cora. Don't you care at all? I muttered. He's an asshole who entertained my wife and cheated with a much better woman. You want to save his ass, then take action. Personally, I don't give a shit anymore. Cora, I'll be ahead of you in line to file papers in divorce court on Monday. Please bring coffee for me, black with sugar. Cora said nothing, but there were tears in her eyes. Detective Abel sent 2 officers with Abby to collect the ransom. It was almost all she had left of her savings. Since we'd been married, I'd paid for everything. She bought a few personal items for herself, and now I suspect she gave Larry some money or bought him gifts. When they came back with a satchel of money, I stood up and said I was leaving. You can't leave, said the detective. Why not? Either you arrest me or I'll leave and go fishing with my friends again. I'll take my cell phone with me in case you need to call me about the funeral. I knew I said it horribly, but at that moment I didn't care. Cora told them she couldn't stay at the house because of Abby. She would go to her house and the detective told her that he would put a security guard on her house to watch her house until this ordeal was over. He will keep her informed of what is going on. I looked at Abby. I'll stay in the cabin for a couple more days. Once you get your lover back, I'll expect you to move out of my house. Remember what you wanted? The house is mine. Detective Abel didn't know what to do with me. He had no reason to keep me, and my presence here wasn't helping matters. His main concern was getting the hostage back safely. He walked me to my car and told me to keep an eye out for anything suspicious. After all, I was supposedly the original target. I told him I didn't really think so, but thanks for your concern. I got in the car and headed back to the cabin. A few hours later, Al and Joe returned to the cabin. They had driven into town and came back with fresh pizza and beer. I told them all that had happened. The next morning around 8 o'clock, I got in my boat and went fishing. As I passed the Coast Guard, I turned on my very loud fog light and waved at them. Something told me they were told to watch my boat. I just made it easy for them. Al was driving. By the time we got back to the cabin, it was about noon. We made sure we put the fog siren back on in front of the Coast Guard. We didn't want to make their job of watching us any harder. Around 3 o'clock, a car pulled up to my driveway. Al and Joe were just getting out. Al in my car and Joe in his. It was Detective Abel and 2 other detectives, all in suits. You certainly don't look dressed for camping or fishing, so I assume you're here on business. Where are your friends headed? Detective Abel asked. I told them I was going to rent the cabin for a couple more days and they could stay. They asked if they could bring their wives and kids and stay a couple days. Of course, I said yes, and they went to get them. I think they're going to love it here. We all came here in Joe's car, and I lent mine to Al to take his family. So why are you here? Where were you able to save my wonderful brother? I decided to come out and tell you what happened this morning. We were able to find your brother. He was pretty shaken up, but he's going to be okay. I think you were wrong in thinking he was involved in this kidnapping. I've known him all my life, and he's always been involved with women and money. I stand by my assumption of his involvement. I told the detective. You guys want a beer or a soda? A Coke would be nice. We're on duty, so we can't have a beer. Is it okay if we take a look around the cabin? Come on. It's a little dirty in here since we didn't clean up after breakfast this morning. We'll have to clean up before the guys get back here with their wives. I laughed. The other 2 detectives glanced over, and Abel told me what had happened after I left the day before and that morning. I didn't ask, but apparently he wanted to gauge my thoughts. His detectives came back from the motel and no one had seen anything. They said a man asked what room the Bells were staying in, and he told him. The desk clerk said he didn't get a good look at him, and they had people piled up in their room waiting to be evicted. Apparently, Larry and Abby had a room on the 2nd floor with access to the hallway and access through a glass wall to the street by the pool. They figured Larry had been kidnapped and taken out the back door. They questioned several guests, but no one had noticed anything. Larry's car was still parked in the motel parking lot. He must have driven away quickly because almost all of his belongings were there, even his wallet, but there was no money in it. There were no credit cards either, so maybe if the kidnappers tried to use them, they could catch them. The other 2 detectives came over and sat down with us. I got up and got chips and dip. I went and bought each guy a drink and myself a beer. Looks like you're going to have to stick around for a long time if you're going to tell me what was going on this morning. You guys might want to grab something to eat. Sorry, we don't have any donuts. The detectives were nice enough to thank me for the chips and dip. I also put down some pretzels. I sat back down and let Detective Abel continue the story. He said the kidnapper called at 9 in the morning. He explained that he wanted the lawyer Abel claimed to be to hand over the money. The part of town where he was to pick up the money and where Larry was supposed to be was a dangerous neighborhood, and Abby couldn't be safe there. So my dear wife took her own savings to pay the ransom for my asshole brother, her lover, I asked. Yes, she took it. But we returned the money 80% of the time, Abel said. So you got Larry home safe and sound, and you got her money back. A good day's work for you. We got Mr. Bell back, but we lost track of the money. I'll try to explain what happened. We thought we were looking for common kidnappers, but these people had a plan. We were taken by surprise, Abel replied. You keep saying they, so are you sure there was more than one person involved? I asked. According to your brother, a few minutes after your wife left the motel, there was a knock on the door. He thought she had probably forgotten something and opened the door. 2 masked and hooded men knocked him down and injected him with a knockout drug. The next moment, he woke up in what appeared to be a crypt or a closed room with no windows. The room was dark, dirty, and practically empty. There was a bucket he could use as a toilet and 6 bottles of water, but no food. He said he tried to scream, but no one answered him. There was an old mattress on the floor. I know you think he set the whole thing up, but I can't imagine him doing this to himself, Abel said. Detective Abel continued his story. He was told to take a suitcase of money to an abandoned shopping center that had been closed for years. I knew the neighborhood, and it looked like a war zone. There was an old car parked in one of the old garages. It was an abandoned green Chevy. He had to put the suitcase in the trunk, which held the key. Close the trunk and take the key with him. The kidnappers said they had another trunk key. He was then to leave the premises quickly, and after the kidnappers came and checked the suitcase to make sure there were no dye packs to taint the money or any tracking devices, they would call the Bell's house and tell them where they could find Larry. Abel said he told the guy that the terms were unacceptable, but was quickly told that if the money wasn't delivered by 10 o'clock, Larry would die and hung up. We argued with the man on the phone, but he said that or Larry would die. We didn't like the idea, but we figured we could watch the building and the car and see who might come and get the suitcase, and we had no choice, so we agreed. As the saying goes, always follow the trail of money, Abel said. I wondered how this was going to play out. So how did you save asshole Larry and not get the money? I did what I was told and put the suitcase in the trunk of the old green Chevy. I got out quickly and headed back to be with your wife and wait for the call. Jim and Bob, he pointed to the two detectives, hid across the street from the mall. They had binoculars and kept watching the building and the car the whole time. We waited until noon, but no one showed up. I was beginning to worry that something had gone wrong. I had a device sewn into the lining of the suitcase, and it showed that it was still in the trunk of the car. About half an hour later, Mrs. Bell got a call that the money had arrived and gave us the coordinates of where we could find your troublesome Larry. It was located 2 houses below the garage. It was in an old loan office or bank vault. The main locking mechanism had been removed, but someone had welded a large padlock to the door. There was no way Larry could get out. Jim used a sledgehammer and kept pounding on the lock until it finally broke. Larry sat in the dark in his underwear. He had drunk 5 of the 6 bottles of water and was struggling to use the bucket in the dark to relieve himself. We questioned him over and over, but he had no idea who had kidnapped him. All he could remember were 2 masked men. He said they were very angry when they mistook Bell. When they let him talk on the phone, they put a bag over his head. Other than that incident, he was alone. So I don't believe he could have gone through that. So what happened to Abby's money? Didn't you just say the gauge showed they were still in the trunk? I asked. That's unbelievable. While Jim went off to find Larry, Bob came back and opened the trunk of the green car. The suitcase was still there, but all the money had been taken out. The old clunker in the trunk had a false bottom. Under the car, we found that the sewer manhole cover had been removed, and someone had taken the money from under the trunk and got out through the sewer. We found the place where this person got out, about 100 yards behind an abandoned shopping center. It was a deserted street full of dilapidated houses. We don't have anything we can trace who went out or where. We don't even know how many people were involved, except that Larry said he was abducted by 2 men. An ambulance took your brother to the hospital, but the paramedics said he looked okay, but very dirty and shaken. I followed your wife to the hospital to see him. Jim and Bob stayed at the scene for an hour looking for any clues but found nothing. We had the old Chevy towed to our yard to have it looked at. I doubt we'll find anything. Did you notify Cora? I asked. Yes, she thanked us and said she'd have to meet him and tell him she was filing for divorce. She was glad he was safe, but that was it. The 3 detectives stood up and I thanked them for taking the time to explain the situation to me, but I wanted nothing to do with my brother. The best thing he could do was stay away from me. Abel asked me one last time if I knew anyone who might try to kidnap me. Detective Abel, I own and operate a scrap metal recycling center and trailer yard. I had 2 of my best friends with me. 2 of my cousins ran the warehouse while we were gone. I have a few part-time employees, but there's no one trying to kidnap me. Abby could hire someone, but what would she gain from that? Until yesterday, I bought her everything she wanted. She never once spent a dime of her money on me. I have a brother who is a money-hungry gigolo who never has enough. I'd still bet my 2 cents on him. Some time passed when Al and Joe showed up with their families. Everyone seemed so happy, but they knew about Abby, and that made it a little uncomfortable. She had never been close to any of them. I told the guys that I was feeling a little third-rate and that I would be staying at a motel for a couple days. I told them to enjoy the cabin and my boat. I trusted them completely with everything I owned. They were true friends. I would be back in 2 days to put the boat in the dock and close up the cabin. I told them to enjoy their vacation and told them I would see them at work on Monday. I decided that peace and quiet would be best for me. I needed to think about what to do next. I called Cora and invited her to dinner the next day. She agreed. Chapter 3, I met Cora the next day. She looked beautiful but sad. She always dressed like a businesswoman since she was in real estate. We met at the Red Lobster for dinner. We drove separately. Why do you want dinner, Terry? She asked. The last couple days haven't been the best, and I thought we could use a friend. So did you see my asshole brother yesterday? Yeah, I got there shortly after Abby left. I can't believe a friend would do that to me. I never want to see her again. Larry wanted to apologize, but before he could do so, I told him to go to hell. That was the last straw. First he steals from me and then he cheats on me with Abby. I informed him that I would file for divorce on Monday, and if he tried to resist, I would file theft charges against him when he forged my name and withdrew money from my savings account. God, I don't know what I see in him. I feel such a fool for marrying him and then staying with him. He was always a talker. I hoped he had changed when he married you, but I see he hasn't. I'm seeing a lawyer on Monday too. If you want to come with me, that's fine with me. She smiled. Your brother may be a chatterbox, but you're a sweet man. Always willing to help anyone in need. Larry has always been jealous of you, but you probably already know that. What did he say about the kidnapping? Did he admit to setting it up? I asked. Cora laughed lightly. He said he had nothing to do with it. He said they were after you, but he had no idea why. They seemed really pissed off when they took Larry instead of you. I'm confused about all of this. Is there something you know but aren't saying? Let's leave it at that for now. Talking about my brother makes me queasy. How about we go see a lawyer together? We can even have lunch, I asked. Terry, I've always cared for you. It's a shame I picked the wrong brother, but I didn't know you then. We each have to handle our own divorces. Some might think we faked this kidnapping to be together. She laughed. But that doesn't mean we can't have dinner or lunch every now and then. I loved being with her. She seemed so kind and genuine and easy to talk to. I thought about her many times, but I would never admit my feelings to her. We were both married and honored our vows. After the divorce, I hoped things would change. I got to the cabin on Sunday and Al and Joe or their wives had already cleaned up. They thanked me over and over again for the use of the boat. I told them they could use it anytime they wanted. The wives even gave me a hug. Al and Joe had already taken the boat back, tied and locked it up. I said goodbye to Joe and his family and told them I would see him tomorrow, but would be there late. I had to stop by the lawyer's office. I drove Al and his family home since he didn't have a car, since it was just the three of us. I called Abby on Sunday after I got back to the motel and told her that I hoped she was already packing because I would be home Monday after work and she had better leave or wish she hadn't. It was a threat, but I didn't care. I doubt I would have done anything but kick her ass out. She wanted to talk about money and divorce. I told her it's all in the prenup. She'll get what she came in with. The house and pretty much everything in it stays with me. When she said that most of her money is gone because she used it for Larry, I replied that she should thank my brother for that. Talk to him and he might be able to return some of the money. She got very angry with me. You are a horrible, pathetic person. You would let your brother die. I intervened and said, no, I didn't do anything. Maybe if he hadn't entertained my wife, I would have considered helping him. Anyway, I'm going to see a lawyer on Monday. You will be served with divorce papers later this week. I suggest you sign them. On Monday, after I got back from the lawyer's office, I got a call from Cora at work. She said Larry had stopped by her office and picked up his stuff from the house. He had a small trailer. She told him that he had better take only the things that belonged to him. Cora mentioned that Larry tried to apologize again, but she told him to just leave. She would mail the divorce papers to his company's office in Youngstown. As he was leaving, she looked out the window and saw Abby in a car following Larry. I think she rented a truck and my asshole brother helped her drive the stuff. When he got to the door, Cora said she told him that she had dinner with me on Saturday, and that I told him if I ever saw him again, he'd be a dead man. I never said that, but Cora said it scared the hell out of Larry. Cora told Larry, and also Detective Abel, that she canceled all of Larry's credit cards in both of their names. She would no longer pay the bills for him. She told Abel because he was looking for any activity on the stolen credit cards. The case wasn't closed until he caught the kidnappers and hopefully recovered the money. Since they found Larry, this case has been on the back burner. Things are back to normal at work. Cora and I had dinner at least twice a week. We both filed for divorce and the lawyers said it would take about 90 days. We were both surprised that neither Abby nor Larry had raised the issue of divorce. Of course, that would have been a waste of their money and time, since we both had prenuptial agreements. Over the next month, Cora and I became close and she confided in me. She told me that a few months before, Larry had traveled to Las Vegas where he forged her name and took over $100,000. She only found out about it when he was scheduled to make a 2-day trip to Pittsburgh. She saw her savings statement in the bank. At first, she just wanted to tell him she found out, but then she wanted to know why. At first, she thought that most of her savings had probably gone to cover gambling debts. She thought that maybe he had another woman. Cora asked if she could check Abby and Larry's schedules, and it turned out that both were out of town that weekend. Abby had to go to Iowa to visit her sister for a couple days. Now I was acting more annoyed than ever and decided that as I told Cora, I needed some payback. But that would have to wait. Too little time had passed since the kidnapping. We found out that Abby and Larry are living together outside of Cleveland. They're renting an apartment for now. Both were still working. We didn't know if they were happy or not. Cora said that maybe I should leave it alone. It was over. Cora told me that Larry thought I was a buffoon, going to jail to protect my father. There's no way he would have done that. She thinks it was a beautiful and heroic act for my sick father. I knew I was falling in love with her. I just like being around her. Sometimes you feel at home around certain people. Cora helped me feel that way. I asked her if she would marry me when our divorces were final. We hadn't even made love yet, but I meant it. Terry, are you sure you want to do this? I'm probably not the best lover since my husband wants another woman. But she didn't say no and smiled. Our divorces will be finalized next month. Let's celebrate together, spend the night together, and then you decide. I already know how I feel. I didn't doubt my feelings for her. Being around her made me happy. A month passed, and that same week we both received our divorce papers. Cora said she was going away with me for the weekend. I decided to take her to Pittsburgh. I made reservations for us at the Sheraton Inn. I knew it was a great location, and we would be able to see the city. We left on Friday. I drove through Youngstown, crossed the Ohio River and into West Virginia, and then made it to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. In Youngstown, I stopped to put gas in my car using my credit card. I then stopped by Chase Bank, but it was closed, so I put a large deposit on overnight deposit. I told Cora that I was going to deposit the money before I left, but since it was the same bank, I would drop it off there. It was too much money to carry around. We had dinner at the Sheraton. It was wonderful to be with her. After dinner and a few drinks, we went up to the room. That's where we made love. The next morning, we explored part of the city, visiting the Carnegie Institute, which is a museum. After that, we decided to go to a baseball game. We weren't Pirates fans since we were originally from Cleveland, but we decided it would be fun to act like two little kids and had a great time. We went out to dinner again and went back to the hotel for a couple cocktails and a little dancing. It was just nice to be together. It was so hard to believe that my dumb buddy could cheat on a woman like that. Beautiful, wonderful, and fun, a great lover. Everything I could want in a girlfriend or wife. The next day, we headed back to Cleveland, passing through Steubenville and a number of small Amish towns. We stopped and even did some shopping and sightseeing. I dropped her off at her house and told her I would like to see her Monday after work. On Monday, she cooked us dinner. The woman could cook too. When we finished eating, there was a knock on the door. Cora went and answered it. It was Detective Abel. Mrs. Bell, may I come in? I have a couple questions for you. Of course, please come in. Terry, Detective Abel is here. I entered the room and he seemed a little surprised to see me. Before you say anything, Cora and I see each other sometimes. I want you to know that this started after we found out about our exes cheating, I told the detective. You are two adults and what you do is your business. I have a couple questions about the credit cards you canceled that were stolen. Do you still have a list of them? Yes, it's in the desk. I'll go get it right now. She went to get the list and handed it to Detective Abel. What exactly is it about? Cora asked. I noticed that you canceled the one Chase card you both used. Is that correct? Yes, why? Cora asked. Your husband had another Chase card that he used last Friday at a gas station in Youngstown. Larry Bell was in Youngstown on Friday at his corporate office. He said he goes there every other Friday. He said he didn't use that card on Friday and that it was stolen. I only canceled cards that I had duplicates of. I never knew he had another Chase debit card. Was I on that card too? No, he said he was the only one on the card. He said he ordered a new card but didn't use it. So what do you want from me? You can get a list of the cards I canceled. That's the best I can do. I'm sorry I can't be of any help, but it seems to be Larry's problem, not mine. You're right. I just had to check the cards you canceled. You see, that card was used not only to buy gasoline, but also for an overnight deposit made after hours on the same debit card. Someone put $100,000 into an account that previously had a balance of $75,000. What? I asked. You mean someone put $100,000 into Larry's savings account? Who could have done that but Larry himself? Did you question him about it? Yes, he didn't know what to say. Your ex-wife was there, wanting him to tell her where the money came from, and why didn't he tell her he had another $75,000? Your brother just shut up and said he wasn't going to answer any more questions. You may have been right, Mr. Bell, about your brother, but we can't prove anything. We were just tracking the cards that were reported stolen. Your brother said this card wasn't stolen, but he wasn't sure of that when he gave me the list. After the detective left, Cora looked at me. I realized that she wanted to talk to me. I decided to start the conversation by asking her if she was going to marry me. Terry, I care about you, I really do. But I have one problem, and it's a very big one, Cora said. What's that? I'm sure we can solve it if we try. It has to do with the kidnapping. I have a feeling you know more than you've told me. If we get married, I need you to trust me. I've been married twice, and both husbands lied to me. I don't just mean the cheating. I don't want to go through that again. What makes you think I know more? I smiled at her. Terry, we were in Youngstown on Friday. You got gas and stopped by Chase Bank to make a deposit. I've been taking care of you for a very long time. I know you had the same feelings for me, but we were both ready for marriage. I guess you found out about Abby and Larry and set up this kidnapping so I could see what kind of bastard I was married to. So what do you want to know? Did I know about it? Was I involved in it? Just the truth, that's all. I want to be able to always trust you, and you can always trust me. You made that deposit in the bank knowing I would question it, Cora replied. It was a big step for me. As big a step toward trust as I'd ever taken, with the exception of Al and Joe. Cora was right. I should trust her more than anyone else if we were going to be together, and she should trust me too. All right. I'll just give you a few details. One of my best clients said he thought he saw me in Las Vegas. He said he walked up to a guy who he thought might be my twin. The guy was wrapping his arms around a woman as if she was his mistress. He said, "How the hell are you doing, you stupid son of a bitch?" He said the guy got mad at him and told him to back off. That's when he realized it wasn't me. I showed him a picture of me and Abby and asked him if she looked like the woman the man was hanging on to. He said yes, and I told him it was my twin brother and his wife. He said, "Damn, he was all over her and wasn't afraid to grab her right there in the casino. Must be the newlyweds." I just agreed with him. I called Abby's sister and she'd never been there, so I knew what was going on. Abby went to Las Vegas with Larry, and I figured you were the one who paid for the trip. I paid for her airfare, presumably to her sister's house. I checked Abby's savings account, but she hadn't withdrawn any money for the trip. So I decided to find a way to get even. I enlisted the help of a few close friends I could trust. The rest is history. You would have let him die? Cora asked. Of course not, but I wanted him to suffer. I despise him, but he's my brother. I was just hoping you wouldn't help bail him out. I was surprised Abby gave the money, but I'm sure she thought she'd get it back after they found the kidnappers. Why did you give him the money on Friday? I don't understand. I threw away all of his credit cards except the one in his name only after you mentioned that you canceled them all. I checked it, and when I found the balance was $75,000, I figured that was the money he took from you. A card with that kind of money, I was sure he would have reported it missing or started a duplicate, but wouldn't have told you. I bought gas with it so Detective Abel would know the card had been used. I put the money in his account. He's so greedy for money that there's no way he'd say he didn't put that money in. At the same time, I figured it would ruin the relationship between Larry and Abby. She'll always believe it could be her money, and it really is, I laughed. There's no way he'd be able to explain where he got that kind of money. What did you do with the rest of the money? I didn't need any of it. I bought stock in my company for two of my friends who helped me. $50,000 each and put it in their names. They now own about 4% of the stock in my company. I told them not to mess around with it for a while. They both said they liked having a stake in the business. The last $100,000 I've been holding out for you. That's the money my brother stole from you. I think you should put it in the real estate account since there's a lot of money going through it. Cora didn't know what to answer. I was the criminal who kidnapped her husband. What to do with a guy like me? I was as honest as possible and told her the whole truth. She knew I did it to get back at both Abby and Larry, but at the same time I helped her. I didn't take any of the money for myself. Well, I've told you everything. I guess it's up to you to decide if you can trust me. I love you, Cora, and I want you in my life, and I promise not to lie to you. She kissed me, walked me into the bedroom, and we made love. Epilogue. We were married 2 weeks later. We decided to rent a cabin and play the wedding there. It was so nice there. Al and Joe and their families were there, as well as the rest of my staff. Cora's parents were there. I met her sister and some other relatives, as well as a few people who worked for her. It was too cold to swim, but everyone went for a boat ride. No one mentioned Abby or Larry. Nothing was mentioned about the kidnapping either, but I saw Cora hugging Joe and Al. She knew who my real friends were. There was a lot of food and music at the wedding. Cora and I knew we were surrounded by true friends and family. Her parents were a little shocked that I looked like Larry until Cora told them he was my twin brother. After everyone left, Cora and I took a moonlit boat ride. We spent 4 days fishing and just enjoying each other's company. Cora and I had a tentative agreement, but it was for business only. I owned my parts warehouse and she owned her real estate business. Everything else we shared? I sold my house where I'd lived all my life, and Cora sold hers. We bought a condo together to start fresh. It was wonderful to come home to Cora. Sometimes we had dinner out of the house, and sometimes we had dinner at home. Al and Joe's wives became Cora's best friends. Since Cora could not have children, we often watched their children. We were Aunt Cora and Uncle Terry. We are now considering adoption. As far as we have heard, Larry and Abby are no longer together. Furthermore, we heard that Larry had moved out of state, which was fine with me. Cora said she had seen Abby a few times when she was away on business. She had gained weight and was seeing someone from her insurance firm. She never talks to her and only shakes her head when she sees her. We never heard back from Detective Abel, so I guess the kidnapping case is closed for now.